Hi guys, my name is Emma and welcome back. I'm so excited that you guys are loving this series and I'm going to continue it throughout 2019 because there's just so many scenes that we can get into that left all of our jaws on the floor. And today's is no exception. But before we get into today's scene, I want to remind you guys to stay tuned because at the end of this episode, I have a very special guest who's not only going to tell us about a scene that has shook us all, he's also going to tell us the story behind why he's never actually seen this classic horror movie because he's too scared of it because of that scene. So stay tuned for that and let's talk about that scene. It's been called one of the best jump scares in cinematic history. The shocking moment when the final girl almost didn't make it out alive. And I want to remind you, I am talking about the original as it was intended without the sequels when it was released. Just keep that in mind. I mean, does this film even need an introduction? Friday the 13th is an American slasher franchise that began in 1980 with the original film directed by Sean S. Cunningham. The plot takes place at Camp Crystal Lake, where a group of camp counselors are picked off one by one by a masked killer. The movie had an estimated budget of $550,000 but returned over $39 million. The original film stars Betsy Palmer, Adrienne King, and Kevin Bacon. Although this film birthed the horror slasher icon Jason Voorhees, he doesn't actually play a big part in the original film. In fact, he's not even mentioned until over an hour into the film. And he wasn't actually meant to be part of the film at all, just a major plot device. But he managed to make a killer impression in that scene. Spoiler alert, this lead-in and the final scene takes place towards the end of the film, so major spoilers in here if you haven't seen Friday the 13th, but I'm pretty sure I'm good here. What you need to know is that our final girl Alice has just watched all of her friends be picked off one by one by this crazy masked killer, and then Mrs. Voorhees arrives to save the day. Mrs. Voorhees finally cracks after talking to Alice for a while. She tells the story of her son drowning in the lake and dun 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 reveals that she is actually the killer, which leads to a high tension, dramatic fight scene with lots of different locations, which ends in Mrs. Voorhees getting decapitated. Alice then grabs the closest canoe, as you do, and floats into the middle of the river, and then the daylight breaks. Alice is floating in the canoe, head down with her fingertips dipped in the water. The sun has come up and a cinematic 80s redemption song plays. There's a close-up shot of the serene water sparkling in the daylight, fading into a silent shot of a cop car with its siren on, driving towards Alice and stopping at the water's edge. Two cops step out of the car in synchronicity. One slowly approaches the water. Alice is now laying in a slightly different position and slowly awakens. The cop raises his hand to his mouth, yelling something unheard to Alice. The camera begins to zoom in. Alice lifts her head up, playing with her hand in the water. Wait. Why does she do this? She's just watched her friends be picked off one by one. She's just decapitated a woman. She seems awful peaceful. Alice is playful with the water, and just as the zoom slows down, Jason's decaying naked body emerges from the water, pulling her from behind in slow motion. The canoe goes down, overturned, as the camera pans down to the calm, dark water. Alice awakens, shrieking in a tight shot. She is comforted and told by the hospital attendants that it's all right now and everything is over. The doctor, nurse, and cop look over her as she recovers in bed. The cop then lets Alice know that her parents are on the way. Alice asks him, "Is there anyone else alive? Are they all dead?" The cop replies, "Yes, ma'am. 2 of my men pulled you out of the lake. We thought you were dead too. Do you remember very much?" "The boy, is he dead too?" "Who?" "The boy, Jason," Alice replies, frustrated. "Jason?" the cop questions. "In the lake, the one who attacked me, the one who pulled me underneath the water." The cop shakes his head, replying with, "Ma'am, we didn't find any boy." Alice mutters, "But..." An uncomfortable shot is shown of the cop, then the doctor cut to a tight shot of Alice's face. Then he's still there. Alice's eyes glisten like she is still dreaming. Obviously, I'm a little bit younger than this film, and I was lucky enough when I first saw it not to know about this jump scare in this scene that just, I mean, it's shocking, and I'd like to know, those of you who saw this in the cinema, what you thought of it the first time you saw it, because I think it's really obvious why there was such a huge reaction to it. Although this film seems very predictable in current times, with the calm after the storm, tranquil music, and final girl meeting the cop's gaze, the scene caused so much stir not only because of the jump scare, but because when the audience is getting used to the idea of Jason pulling her down, they are awakened again and kind of twisted in a different direction when she awakens in the hospital. This scene is often referred to as the dream sequence in the film, but when Alice is in hospital and she wakes up, she thinks it actually happened, obviously because she says the line, "That means he's still there." And as the audience, we don't really know otherwise, of course, until the sequels. When this movie was released, the makeup artist would often go to showings just to see people react to the Jason emerging scene. I think that he really got a kick out of it. But over time, many crew members have taken credit for this scene, including Victor Miller, Tom Savini, and Roy Kurtz. And it's also said that this scene was never meant to be in the film in the first place. It wasn't scripted. It was actually thought up while they were in production and already filming. In my opinion, this scene changed the whole feel and meaning of the film. A film that was intended to be about a crazed mother turned into a franchise symbolized by a hockey mask. Just as Mrs. Voorhees was realized and given as the twist, she was forgotten as Jason jumped out of that water. The scene really provided that last hurrah for the audience, and I'm sure it left a lot of people walking out of there expecting something to jump out behind every single bush, which is what a lot of good jump scares do. And I know jump scares get a really bad rap, but this has to be one of the best ones. Do you guys agree? What do you guys think of that scene? I know a lot of you guys are huge slasher fans, so I wanted to dedicate this video to you because I don't talk about slashers a lot. But before we go, Slaptam is here to tell us his story about why he's never seen The Exorcist. Never. What? Make sure you check out his link down below.
How you doing? I'm Callan from Slapped Ham, and this is That Scene. So I'm going to be talking about a particular scene from The Exorcist, and today's a bit of a strange case because I've never actually seen the movie, and I'll explain why. So the particular scene I'm talking about is the scene where Reagan stabs herself with the crucifix, screaming obscenities. Yeah, I'm talking about that scene. So the reason why I've never actually seen the movie, it goes back to my childhood. I was about maybe 12 years old. And my older brother, who had just seen The Exorcist, was explaining this particular scene to a friend of his, and I happened to be just in the room listening. And so he explained the scene in rather gruesome detail, and I was absolutely shocked. You know, as a kid, when you hear a bit of information you know you shouldn't have heard, and you're just like, sitting there and it's rattling around in your little brain and you don't know how to process the information, so you just sort of store it way down in the basement. Well, that was this piece of information. My brother was describing this scene in rather gruesome detail, and I was shook. I didn't know how to process the information. So I'm sitting there wondering what's going on, listening to this gruesome scene from a movie, absolutely terrified, don't know what to do with myself. So pretty much ever since then, I've never actually been able to watch The Exorcist. I know it's a classic, and I know as an adult I really should sit down and watch it, but just that experience, listening to that scene and just having that rattle around in my brain, it was all just a bit too much. Now, for the sake of this segment, I did sit down and watch the actual scene. I looked it up on the internet and sat there and watched it. And I have to say, it's just as shocking, just as gruesome as I thought it would be. So even by modern standards, it's an intense scene that stands out among other classic horror films. So you can truly see why this scene went down as one of the most gruesome horror scenes in a movie to date. And it's been terrifying audiences ever since. So there's a little glimpse into my childhood and why I've never actually seen The Exorcist. My name's Callan from Slapped Ham, and this has been That Scene.